If you try too hard to be happy, you might actually end up feeling quite miserable. I know this sounds counterintuitive at first, especially coming from someone like me who constantly talks about intentional living. But hear me out. This is not philosophy. This is backed by actual psychological research. People who are far too concerned about being happy report much lower well being and lower satisfaction in life. In fact, they report higher depressive symptoms than the people who don't chase happiness like another item on their checklist. In this video, we're going to be unpacking why you could be doing everything right. You could understand how the mind and the body work. You could be doing your habit trackers, gratitude notes, journaling every night, and still happiness does not seem to find you. Trust me, there's nothing wrong with you. It just turns out that you've been playing the wrong game because you cannot mechanically think your way into happiness out of your own mind. What happens is that when we obsess over the things that are supposed to make us happy, we end up focusing way too hard on the act itself rather than the experience that the act is inducing in us. We tend to become very critical of our own actions, hyper of our emotions. Oh, is this working? I've been journaling every night. I've been writing gratitude notes. I was kind to somebody today. But the more you chase happiness, the more elusive it tends to become. This doesn't mean you have to sit in the back seat for the rest of your life. The longest study ever done on happiness, the Harvard study on adult development, found something really fascinating. But it wasn't the data that surprised me. It was how much control we actually have over our happiness. About 50% of our happiness is dependent on genes, so that is completely out of our control. 10% is dependent on circumstances, so partially under our control, but 40% is directly within our control. 40%. Even somebody who thinks they are extremely unhappy in life actually has greater control over their happiness than they can imagine. But there's one catch. You just cannot force happiness. So if you can't force happiness, how exactly do you exercise the 40% control over it? You can create the right conditions for happiness to emerge in your life in four very simple ways that we're going to talk about now. First of all, focus on connections. The strongest predictor of happiness and well being has nothing to do with anything material. So, no, not your job, not money, not image, not your bank balance, and not even your life events like weddings or vacations. They may give you a small spike in happiness, but this is not what sustainable happiness and well being is all about. It's about connection, it's about being known, supporting others, and being supported by others. If you're having a hard day today, instead of asking, why am I not happy yet? Ask, who am I showing up for today? Accept that we're going to have negative thoughts. We have spent all of our life developing a certain set of thought patterns. If we want to outsmart those thought patterns in a week, I'm sorry, we're going to be fighting an uphill battle. What you can do instead is think about those thought patterns, focus on them one by one, understand the value system behind each of those thought patterns, and unpack them. Instead of fighting them, understand them, and trust me, that is going to be much more helpful to you. So when you're having these negative emotions, not only are you experiencing the sadness or the anxiety that the emotion is putting you through, you are also judging yourself for having negative emotions. And trust me, that is not how you control your negative thoughts. In fact, you don't control your thoughts at all. What you control is your response to those thoughts. So next time when a negative thought comes up in your brain, instead of fighting the thought and feeling guilty about it, questioning your whole life over that one single thought, ask yourself, is that thought really a fact? Do I really need to believe the thought with all that I have? When you learn to challenge this internal narrative, trust me, over time, these negative thought patterns will slowly fade away and they will lose their power over you. So here is the part that most people never look at. A lot of our thought patterns are actually controlled by certain saboteurs in our brains. You could be a perfectionist, a very controlling person. You could be a people pleaser. You could be playing a victim in all of your situations. These are all sabotaging thought patterns that we learned as children as a way to cope up with our environment and with the things that we perceived as mental and physical threats. But now that we are adults and the environment has changed, we have greater control over our responses to situations. Therefore, these sabotaging behaviors don't really serve us anymore, but they continue to be with us because we have not actively taken any measures to get rid of them. So start by noticing your behaviors in different situations. There's a high chance that these situations which trigger you and cause such overwhelming emotions for you have a pattern attached to them. Not only should you pay attention to the exact environment that you get triggered in, you should also pay attention to the emotional experience that you have in that environment. When you pay attention to that, you also need to think about the value system that you have attached to such emotions and the reason why they keep occurring in the same manner again. And it will get much easier to start working through them. Finally, coming to the one that is most misunderstood by social media. Yes, you should practice positive actions like gratitude, kindness, and even be journaling, maybe using a habit tracker. Although these are very small actions, they have a lot of potential to create positive experiences for you, but not in the way that most people use them. But you cannot treat these things like a chore. They should not feel like a burden. One study even found that people who practiced gratitude only once a week were much happier than people who practiced it thrice a week. So the nuance is very simple. More is not better. The goal is not to perform positivity, it is to practice it voluntarily and very gently. If any of this starts to feel like pressure, it's okay to step back, even if it costs you a tick on your habit tracker. As it turns out, you don't need a new personality, you don't need a new life. Happiness is not something that you squeeze out of your life. It is something that you make room for by simply being more human and reducing the pressure. And trust me, happiness will find you as a byproduct. If you enjoy ideas like these, consider subscribing. We're going to be unpacking a lot more of the things that nobody talks about. Because real change does not come from forcing it. It comes by engaging with the life that you're already living today.